you sent over.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, kind of intimidating at first. Like, wow, this thing's huge. But once we dug in,
Right.
it's actually a really fascinating look at how India is gearing up for, well, the whole AI revolution everyone's talking about.
It's really impressive, actually.
Right.
And it's not just, throwing money at the problem or trying to turn everyone into a coder. The report really digs into building a workforce that's adaptable,
Yeah.
ready for whatever's next, future ready.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. The report talks about employability being on the rise. What's the story there?
So overall employability in India has actually jumped to 51.25%, which compared to last year is a pretty big increase. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, the report goes beyond just the national level. It actually breaks down the trends by region.
Which is how we found our first surprise, right? Haryana.
Right.
Not exactly the first place you think of when you hear tech hub.
Exactly. You usually picture Bangalore, Mumbai, the usual suspects. But this report highlights Haryana, their young people, specifically as having the highest employability in the whole country.
So what is Haryana doing differently? Like, what's the secret sauce? What can we learn from their success?
Well, it seems like they've been putting a lot of resources into vocational training and skill development programs, especially in those emerging tech fields.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they're attracting investment in industries that need a digitally skilled workforce.
So it's not just about being a big tech hub. It's about targeted investment and, I guess, creating the right environment for that kind of growth.
Exactly.
It's like discovering this hidden talent pool, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of hidden gems, the report also points to some cities, beyond the usual tech centers that are really up and coming. Pune and Trivandrum, for example.
Oh, absolutely. Bangalore is obviously still a powerhouse, but when you see places like Pune exceeding even Bangalore's impressive 72.46% employability score with a score of 75%, that signals something.
Yeah.
For job seekers, it's like, hey, there are more options out there. And for companies, it's a clear sign to look beyond the usual suspects, diversify those talent sourcing strategies.
Okay, so we've got a more diverse talent pool than we might think. But what about the skills themselves? It's easy to get caught up in the whole everyone needs to learn to code thing. But this report, it seems to go beyond that. They talk about what they call future skills.
Right.
What exactly are those?
Think about it this way. What makes us human? What makes us better than algorithms? It's things like critical thinking, adaptability, the ability to learn quickly and apply that knowledge. And that's what the report is emphasizing, those uniquely human skills.
So can you give me an example? Like, what would that look like in practice?
Imagine you're looking at a data set, a
Yeah.
huge data set. And you're not just looking at the numbers, you're thinking critically, looking for potential biases, errors, things like that. Or say you need to learn a new software program and not just learn it, but actually apply that knowledge to solve a real-world problem.
So it's not just what you know, it's how you learn. Honestly, that's kind of a relief to hear because I feel like those skills are valuable no matter what you do.
Exactly. And what's great is that the report actually gives concrete examples of how India is nurturing these future skills. Like, take Gujarat's ITI network. They're not just pumping out coders. They're giving people this broad range of technical skills, soft skills, preparing them for a world where AI is everywhere.
And the report doesn't shy away from the fact that AI is going to change a lot of industries, maybe even eliminate some jobs.
Right. It acknowledges that disruption.
But it's not all doom and gloom. It also focuses on the new jobs that are emerging. And these aren't just your typical, Silicon Valley roles.
No, not at all.
Right.
We're talking about AI's impact on sectors you might not expect, like poultry farming, for instance.
Poultry farming.
The report dives into this, showing how AI skills are needed in agriculture, healthcare, manufacturing. AI is everywhere, so these skills are relevant for everyone, not just your typical techies.
AI for poultry, who knew? Okay, so we've got a more diverse talent pool than we might think. We've got future skills that apply across the board, and we've got new job opportunities popping up in some pretty unexpected places. But how is India making this happen? What are they actually doing to equip people with these skills? So we've established that India is serious about this whole skilling up for the AI age thing.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like, on the ground? The report highlights some pretty interesting initiatives.
One that really stood out to me was Andhra Pradesh. They've really gone all in on building this really comprehensive skills ecosystem.
Okay, I have to admit, when I got to that part of the report, I was a little overwhelmed. Skill hubs, skill colleges, skill spokes. It was like alphabet soup. What is all that?
It sounds more complicated than it is. It's actually a really smart, multi-tiered approach.
Yeah.
So think of it this way. You've got skill hubs in almost every assembly constituency. They offer a wide range of training programs.
Okay.
Then you've got skill colleges in each parliamentary constituency. And they offer more specialized courses, stuff that's really aligned with what industries are looking for.
Okay.
And then, and this is really cool, they have something called skill spokes. These are training centers that are actually run by the industries themselves.
So it's like on-the-job training, but like on a whole other level.
Exactly. And it's not just about, churning out tech graduates. They've got programs for everything: traditional crafts, digital marketing, entrepreneurship, you name it.
Wow.
It's really about equipping people from all walks of life with the skills they need.
And it seems to be working. The report mentions that over 15 lakh beneficiaries have been trained in Andhra Pradesh alone just since 2019. That's incredible.
It's huge.
And what I find really encouraging is how they're tailoring these programs to specific communities and their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. They have initiatives specifically for women who are re-entering the workforce, programs for rural communities, even partnerships with international agencies to help people find work overseas. They're really trying to make sure everyone has access to these opportunities.
Which is key, right? Because access and opportunity are everything. And speaking of making things accessible, one of the things that really jumped out at me in the report was this whole idea of using virtual reality for skill development.
Oh, yeah.
VR leatherworking, can you believe it?
It sounds crazy, but it's actually a perfect example of how India is using innovation to change the game when it comes to skilling up their workforce.
It really does.
The Leather Sector Skill Council, they're using VR to teach people really, really precise skills, like computerized stitching.
It makes so much sense when you think about it. No need for big workshops or expensive materials. You don't even have to be in a certain location.
Exactly. It just makes training accessible to so many more people. Plus, it's way more engaging than traditional methods and probably a lot more efficient, too. And, it's not just about being tech savvy. It's about finding creative ways to get people excited about learning and prepare them for the jobs of the future.
And that future, let's be honest, it's only going to get more and more intertwined with AI. And this report, it doesn't just focus on what's happening now. It looks ahead, too, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's clear that this whole AI skills thing, this isn't just happening in India. This is a global trend. In fact, the OECD report, which the ISR uses to look at AI trends across 14 different countries, found that the demand for AI skills grew by an average of 33% just between 2019 and 2022.
Wow.
That's massive.
That really underscores just how important it is to not just learn these skills, but to keep learning, keep updating those skills. It's a lifelong journey. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think it's time to pause, take a step back, and really consider what we've learned so far from this deep dive into the India Skills Report. What are your biggest takeaways? So we've talked a lot about what the India Skills Report says, about the skills landscape, the initiatives, all that.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What does this actually mean for someone listening to this right now?
That's the question. Right. And the good news is this report doesn't just paint a pretty picture. It gets into the nitty-gritty of what skills are actually in demand in this whole AI age.
We talked about those future skills, the critical thinking, adaptability, all that. But what about the more technical skills? Any specific areas that really stand out?
Well, as you might expect, Python is still like the gold standard for AI development. But the report also highlights data analysis, machine learning, those are big ones, and even more specialized areas like NLP, natural language processing, and computer vision are becoming increasingly important.
Okay, I think we need to break those down a bit. For those of us who weren't data scientists.
Sure.
Like NLP, what does that even mean?
So think about this. You're scrolling through, let's say, Instagram, and you see those suggested posts or those ads that seem weirdly specific to you.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy, actually.
Right. That's NLP in action. Analyzing your data to figure out what content you're most likely to engage with.
So when the report talks about NLP skills, they're talking about what? Teaching machines to understand how we communicate.
Exactly. And it's not just about social media. NLP is used in chatbots, virtual assistants, translation software. There are even tools that can analyze the emotions behind text. Like, is this customer review positive or negative?
Wow, that's kind of scary, but also cool.
Right. It's like we're on the verge of machines understanding us almost as well as we understand each other.
Almost.
And then there's computer vision, which is basically teaching machines to see and understand images like those self-driving cars everyone's talking about, Or in healthcare, where they're using it to analyze medical images. Even that Face ID thing on your phone, that's computer vision.
Right, okay, so I've got Python, data analysis, NLP, computer vision.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So for someone listening who's thinking, okay, where do I even begin? What would you suggest? Where do you start this whole upskilling journey?
Well, the report makes it clear there's no magic bullet, no one right path for everyone. But they do highlight a few key strategies. Online courses and certifications are a good starting point. They're flexible, they're often affordable, and they can give you those specialized skills that employers are looking for.
And there are so many platforms out there now, right?
Tons.
Like you can find something for every level, every learning style.
Absolutely. And it's not just about formal learning either. The report talks about networking, finding your community.
Right, like online forums or those industry events.
Exactly. Connecting with other people in the field is huge. You can share knowledge, get advice, stay updated on the latest trends. It's invaluable.
It's like building your own support system, which I think is especially important in a field like AI that's changing so rapidly.
It's essential. And that brings us to, I think, one of the most important takeaways from this whole report. Lifelong learning. It's not enough to just learn a set of skills and call it a day.
You got to keep learning, keep growing.
Exactly, because this field is constantly evolving. The skills you have today, they might be obsolete in a few years. So you've got to be adaptable, you've got to be curious, you've got to be a lifelong learner.
And that's kind of exciting when you think about it.
It is. It means no matter who you are, what your background is, you have the power to shape your own future in this new world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the India Skills Report 2024, I think we're left with a sense of optimism.
Yeah.
India is making big moves to prepare its people for the future of work, for this AI-driven world.
And there's so many opportunities out there.
But it's really up to each of us to take ownership of our own skills, our own learning, and embrace the possibilities of this new era.
Couldn't have said it better myself.